Okay, guys, toothpaste in my mouth. I'm not out to make a show, as you can tell. I just show up, right? So, anyway, sorry. I'm going to address another question I got, and I want to apologize to the sender of the question in my text. Um, I have just been inundated with requests for proof. I mean, everything from correction to congratulations to can you explain to me to, and so it's, I feel like I dropped the ball on this question. And so I want to address it, and I want to address it for you all, and I want to address it for this person as well. I'm just going to read it. I'm asking out of sheer ignorance. I'm not in the land as you are. When do the farmers, and she's talking about today's farmers in Israel, usually start harvesting the barley in Israel? Is it after the religious observance that will be April this year, or is it as soon as the barley is ripe in each of their own fields? This might be something that could prove that March is actually the true Nisan this year, as farmers would not wait until April if their fields are ripe now. Could you get proof of harvesting going on now? Even so, I'm interested to know if the Jews have a certain time farmers must wait, or if it's just rabbinical religious folks reenacting, as they call it. Are the farmers starting to harvest the barley in the field now? To the best of my knowledge, from the condition of the domestic barley in the South, it would not yet be time to harvest that barley. Um, and I've kind of gone over this before for you guys, that according to Deuteronomy, that things that I look at on the land are only the things that Elohim has watered and provided for us to look at. Within the scope domestically, what happens is the farmer puts the seed down when he's ready to put the seed down. He plows the field when he's ready to plow the field. He fertilizes the field with chemical fertilizers that are not organic. They include hormones and things like this. He mixes, literally, we see it all the time, they mix the seeds together in the field. So you have fields that are sown in literally barley and wheat and I think rye. I don't know what that third grain is. So they mix the seeds of their field. Probably that's for animal food and not for human consumption, but they still do that. And they are not working with the timing on the land of Elohim. We're told in Deuteronomy that when we were brought into this land, that it wasn't going to be like it was when it was in Egypt. When they were living in Egypt, they sowed their seed and they watered it themselves by foot. They carried the water to it. It says that it's a land that Elohim waters and he cares for from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So there is a cycle and a season that he clearly presents to us as him being the master gardener of this land we live on. So no, there is absolutely no religious connection, either Hallelic or biblical or any other theological form of harvesting on this land. As soon as the barley is ready, they take the whole field. Now, I want to get into some of this a little bit and explain to you how I see the first fruits, because this may help this individual and it may help some of you. But first, I want to continue with a question. The religious folks reenacting, when you see them go to the field and they've got their sickle and they're harvesting the field, what they have done is they have chosen a field of wheat, not barley, of domestic wheat. And they purchase this field from the person who grows it. They say it's halal, it's kosher, not sorry, that's the wrong word. They say that it's manhedrin, that's the word I'm looking for, and that it is without blemish and it's acceptable to them. They purchase this field and they go in and they harvest it by hand with a sickle. But the week of unleavened is not about wheat. The week of unleavened is about barley. So then these same religious folks will take their wheat offering or their wheat field, and they take it back. And this is all done by hand, and it's a beautiful process to watch. I mean, you see all these Levitical people that are reenacting the making of a wheat matzah, which is not what we were commanded to eat. It was barley cakes that were unleavened. Anyway, and they have this beautiful display of working in unison. We're going to roll the dough this fast. We're going to make sure the water doesn't sit there very long. We're going to pass it to this guy, and he's going to pass it to this guy, and this guy's going to put it in the oven, and this guy's going to take it after I take it out of the oven. And it's just a orchestration of unity and beauty. Truly it is. But they're working with the wrong medium. We are to have unleavened barley. So what they're enacting, these Judaic religious folk, is the traditions of man, not the traditions of Elohim. Let's go on down. Let me finish reading the pertinent part. She says, I was asking how the harvesting is, or if you prefer, was done in relation to the wave sheaf offering. Could the farmers harvest the fields in ancient time before the wave offering? I don't think so. So if that is true, and this is actually Nisan, now they would actually begin harvesting now, not next month. If you are looking for a general ripening of the field, she's correct. That is not what I'm looking for. Okay. I want to try to explain how the ancient grains work as opposed to the domestic grains. The ancient grains that are unhybridized, overbred by humans, reacted completely differently on the land than the hybridized barley. Only in our generation have we been presented with a grain that will turn at the same time from one end of the field to the other end of the field into a mature grain. Only in our generation. The ancient grains are going to, as individual stalks, make a seed before it dies. Conditions like water, lack of it, and this year I learned too much water. I never considered that too much water cause a hastening of the plant to make an offspring. Genesis 1 said that Elohim created every plant to bear a seed after its own kind. And these ancient grains that are unadulterated do just that. Each individual plant, not just the field, each individual plant. So too much water and too little water hastens the maturing of the plant because God designed it to make a seed. Things like little bumps, little rises, whether it was a mole or a groundhog or any little mound in the earth, those grains, whether they're barley or they're oats, will ripen before the rest of it because the rain drains out of those little elevations, and that will be ready first. If there is a low place in the field, those will be slow. If there is an inclination to the field, the ones on the top end will ripen first as the water drains away. The ones on the bottom, they won't ripen as quickly. And actually, you can see this somewhat in the domestic fields. A couple of years ago, I don't know if I have that picture. I can show you. I'll go look for it. I'll post it if I can find it. There was a hill on a field on an elevation, and the barley up here at this end, domestic barley, was turning golden, while the ones at this end were still green. Other things like if you've got a field that's sloped like this with a ridge or a rise in the center, the side that faces the morning sun is going to ripen first. This time of year, that's the longest exposure to the sun. When the sun comes up in the east, it is in the sky longer than when it goes down in the west. The east side gets the long rays of the sun. The west side in this time of year gets the short rays of the sun. So an east-facing sloped field will mature more quickly. Yes, we can see somewhat in the domestic field from a slope perspective that the high end will be slightly ahead of the rest. But when you're looking at the ancient grains, it's really pronounced. So when we look at the domestic field, we're looking at something that has been manipulated to give the people more time to gather the harvest into, or I should say, just cut the harvest. Leave it like that. Hang on, I got to get my thoughts together. I lost my train of thought. Give me a second. Okay, and the final concern from the person who wrote me the question was that this early Passover date, according to the calendar that I personally believe in, is going to correspond with their Feast of Purim. Well, let me tell you one thing. We all know Purim is not commanded in the feasts of Elohim. It's not commanded. It is recorded, and it is recorded as a memorial of a victory. And we read a similar thing at the end of the book of Judges, I think, when all of the women were killed, and I'm not going to get all the tribe names right, but all of the women were killed from this one tribe of Israel, and they allowed them, after saying they wouldn't, to take from the daughters of the rest of the tribes so that their line could continue. They had a memorial of this every year that wasn't commanded, but they had a memorial. And there's nothing wrong with keeping a memorial or a custom or a remembrance, but it's not commanded. So for me, the Feast of Esther is not holy, okay? Especially it's not holy in Israel. Let me explain why. Because in Israel, it has literally become like a Passover. I'm not a Passover, I'm sorry. I got a text, I lost my train of thought. Literally, it has become like a Halloween. Our costumes here in Israel that the people wear do not reflect Mordecai, do not reflect Esther, do not reflect Haman, do not reflect Mordecai's husband, the king. They don't. The children wear superheroes. They dress like, I don't know, I mean, everything. Every superhero you see on all the cartoons. Now, granted, it's probably not as demonically rooted as we see in the United States, where people actually dress like demons and ghosts and witches, and you don't see that so much here. But they have taken this feast now, and it's a time of partying. Esther is little remembered unless you're in a super religious group, and it has become a day of having a party, having a costume, and getting drunk and making parades. So I don't have an issue that the Passover that I have decided to keep because of the barley that I inspected falls with the feast or the remembrance of Esther. I'd rather not be in that. And I don't see an issue with it. Why? Because Esther was kept in the last month of the year. And if we're in barley season, then Esther would have been last month. All of the rabbinical calendars are based on an algorithm from the dark of the moon. From the dark, not from the new moon sliver, from the dark. And they calculate and they project ahead of time what the calendar will be. And they don't use barley anymore, and it's still on the land. So I can't help that they're going to have the Feast of Esther on the same day that I'll be keeping the Passover. I can't help it. It just is what it is. But I'll stick with what God has shown me and let them deal with their calendar, they calculate from the dark of the moon and not from the new moon sliver. And the fact that they calculate it and they don't look to the land to tell them according to the 7 species that were given as first fruits to offer in the temple of Jerusalem and to know the timing of Elohim's calendar by. So I'm going to pause it and get some scriptures together. I hope that answered her question. I'm going to try to further untangle this for the person who asked the question and to show her why I see the first fruits as something that came earlier in the field than the general harvest of the land, or even the general harvest of a field. So let me get my scriptures and we'll start going through them. Okay, this is exactly what I believe about first fruits. I believe that there were 7 acceptable first fruits that could be offered in the temple, and they're found in Deuteronomy 8:8. Here they are: a land of wheat and barley and figs, and vines, which are grapes, and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of oil, olive, and honey. Those are the acceptable first fruits in the temple. Now, if we look at Exodus 23, we will see that it's been here all the time, and I'm pointing my fingers at me that I've begin to come into this understanding since last year, that the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God. So that is a more wide swept idea than talking about the corn or what we think, that's a European term that means grain. It's a more wide swept idea. Exodus 34, 26. And the first, the reshit of thy bikur, of thy land, thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord. Okay, now we're going to see that it does indeed include the fruits of these trees. 2 Chronicles 31, 5. And as soon as the commandment came abroad, the children of Israel brought in abundance of the first fruits of corn, which is grains, wine and oil and honey, and all of the increase of the field, and the tithe, which is a different subject, of all things brought they in abundantly. We're going to go to Nehemiah 10, 35. To bring the first fruits of our ground and the first fruits of all the fruit of all the trees year by year into the house of the Lord. So go back and review the list in Deuteronomy 8:8. There were, I think, 4. There were 4 species of trees in that. Nehemiah 10:37. Whoops. Right here. And that we should bring in the first fruits of our dough and of our offerings and the fruit of all manner of trees, of wine and of oil unto the priests. Yeah, we're going to trust that computer. That's crazy, huh? Unto the priests, that they might have the tithe in all the city of our tillage. Now, I believe that the first fruits belong to Elohim because he provided them and he calls them holy, separated to himself. Numbers 18, 12. And the best of the oil and all the best of the wine and of the wheat, the first fruits of them which thou shalt offer unto the Lord, them I have given thee. I believe that the first fruits were completely reserved for Elohim and not to be handled in an unholy or an unseparate manner. So holy just means that you're separate and you're set apart for the work and the service of Elohim. And That's what we're talking about with these first fruits offering, that they're holy and separated unto the work of Elohim. I didn't write this verse down. Hang on, let me get it. So we'll just pause here. I'll quit sharing. Make sure I hit the right button. Okay, that was pretty easily solved. So let's go back over here. And now we're looking at Ezekiel 48:14. They shall not sell of it, neither exchange nor alienate. Now, that word alienate, let's look at that. In Briggs, Drivers, and Young, it literally means, where did it go? Pass over, pass by, or pass through. Okay, we can't bypass the first fruits of the land, for it is holy unto the Lord. I believe the beginning first fruits represent the Messiah. Let's go to New Testament now. I forget I have to do that down here. 15:20. But now Christ is risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them who slept. First fruits, okay? Colossians 1:18, let's go there. Tells us he is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, okay? Firstborn. So we have the symbol of all these early ripening things, these first appearing things on the land being a type of Yeshua. Why? Because he is the head of the body. Let's go back up here. 1:16, for all things by him, by him are all things created that are in heaven and earth, that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him, for him. He is, like, trust it. Trust it. Thank you. He is before all things, and by him all things consist. The preeminent rule. The preeminent rule. The preeminent first fruits rule, whether it came from the land or it came from living, breathing things, all have a representation of the character of Christ and what he, or Mashiach, forgive me if you hate those churchy terms, and the work that he came to do of redemption and reparation. We speak a lot about reparation today to all of these races, including the Jews, and we don't realize that the Messiah is the ultimate repairer of what's broken, and he came to make reparation for us so that we could again be enjoined to Elohim in a covenant. Exodus 23:19. The reshit of thy first fruits of thy land shall thou bring into the house of Yehovah thy Elohim. So Leviticus, let's see, wait a minute, I'm going to go Romans 11. (16) And if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. He was first. He was, as a first fruit, as the earliest available barley of all the fields, of all the tribes of Israel. He was that earliest omer. That's who he represents, that earliest preeminent from all of the land of Israel. All. I can't stress that enough. The barley was created by him, for him. Okay, so we have to look at the preeminent omer on the land. And that's what I've determined this year. And what I've done. Is that field ready? No, it's not ready. But there's a preeminent omer on that land. Okay, let's keep going. Here's that verse, and I want to look at this word right here. This word right here is like you see in the King James when it talks about the Abib. We read it in the King James and it says the month of Abib, but in the Hebrew it says the month of the Abib. So it's the same thing here. It's and the going of everyone. What is the going of everyone? The going of everyone is et omer. Omer. Sorry. It's the way you're used to hearing it. The going of everyone is the omer. Okay, it happens first in the harvest, and it is to the priest. That's literally what this is saying in this verse. All right. So this verse is not saying that the omer is taken from the general harvest. This verse is literally saying that the earliest available going or wave sheaf belongs to the Kohanim. A field was never harvested in the exact same moment, the way that we see domestic fields harvested in our lifetime. Let me get rid of this real quick. I'm going to put it back on with the Strongs, and we're going to go to Ruth. Ruth is going to show us 2:21. And Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. So we see at the beginning of the story that Boaz had a shared field with another kinsman. We see that Ruth has already harvested in the field of Boaz, and now they have sat, and she has ate with his people that are working in his field, and now he's saying, continue with my maidens in this field. So this was not a one-day harvest like our eyes are accustomed to seeing when they take the combine and they go through the field and they cut it all in one day. The ancient grains do not present that way. And Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they meet thee not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. 2 Samuel 2:19. Oops, 2:9, sorry, we'll just go up. Huh? 21:9. Yes. There we go. And he delivered them into the hands of the Gibeonites, and he hanged them. He's talking now about Saul and his son Jonathan. And they hanged them in the hill before the Lord. And they fell all 7 together and were put to death in the days, I think this is Jonathan. Saul, yes. The king took 2 sons of Rizpah, the daughter of Ahai, whom she bare unto Saul. Okay, this was the sons of Saul, sorry. And they hanged them in a hill before the Lord, and they fell all 7 together and were put to death in the days of the harvest, in the first days, in the beginning of the barley harvest. Harvest wasn't one day. It was a process of time. 21:10. And Rizpah, the daughter of Ahah, took the sackcloth and spread it, for she was upon the rock from the beginning of the harvest until the water dropped down upon them out of heaven, which would have been the 7th month sometime, and suffered neither the birds of the air to rest on them by day, nor the beasts of the field by night. Okay, we are given a clear and sure picture that the harvest to a barley field in ancient Israel was not going to come in one day. Now, I want to talk to you about the etymology of the word first fruits. Let's just do it together. Let me go here. We're going to pick this one right here, and we're going to see the word bikur is the first fruits of the crop, the first ripe, hasty fruit. That's what I want you to see, is that it is a hasty fruit. Let's go here. I'm going to go to this side over here, come down on this one, because it is something I want to show you. If I can find it. Okay, that's the root. I want to go to this word. Okay. Here we go. Isaiah 28 tells us that the glorious, that the glorious beauty, which the land is in its glorious beauty, which is on the head of the fat, okay, valley. And that's what I see. It's fat with life. It's teeming with everything bringing forth fruit after its kind. It's beautiful. Well, in this verse, that shall be as a fading flower. As the hasty fruit, the bikur, the first crop, the hasty fruit, before the harvest as a crop. This says summer. It's not done as a favor. The hasty fruit comes before the harvest, which when he that looketh upon it seeth that while it is yet in his hand, he eateth it up. So we need to look at the etymology of the word. If we look at it in the etymological dictionary of biblical Hebrew, which I love this thing because they didn't know that an Anglo was going to be necessarily using it for a reference. So I feel like this one has tried to stay true to the intent of the scripture. Okay, that bakar, B-A-C-A-R, bakar, that is the root, bet, kaf, resh. It means the root, force out, free productive elements. Now, when I said to you that the first fruits is like the grain that breaks the matrix of the year, it's because bikor and bikur share the same root. Bikor is the first fruits of things that breathe. Bikur is the first fruits of things that are green and grow and bring forth seeds. But they share the same root because it's God that gives increase, and he constructed it so that we would understand that the first of 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 the first not only represented Messiah, but it represented belonging to him, his possession. Messiah is his possession. So the first definition under this root is initially forcing open the mother's womb, giving firstborn rights. Okay, all of these twins that are born, Jacob and Esau, Tamar's twins, these babies that would put their arm out or their foot out and they would tie the cord on it. They were to discern, they were marking the firstborn, the one that broke the matrix of the mother's womb. Okay, that's our picture. Okay, and if you look at the word for Tamar, her firstborn son was called a breaker, and it was a shadow type of the Messiah. Forcing out, that's number 3. First fruits, 4. 5, firstborn, and 6, a young colt, as in a horse. So with the etymology of a fruit that is hasty, that is coming first, that a firstborn son that's coming before, even if he has a twin in the womb with him. Okay, we must not, what was the word that was used? We must not alienate this sign of the Messiah, who was the first omer on the land of Israel, the first omer. He was before all things, because all things were created by him, through him, and for him. So this is why I don't look at the domestic barley. For me, it's a moot point. I don't know what the farmers are doing in Israel, because for me, it's a moot point. It's okay that the Passover I'm keeping will happen when they're remembering the Feast of Esther, that was calculated according to a calendar that is based on when you can't see the new moon. And it's not based on the first fruits of the land that still grow all around them, that are still visible on the land. This is why that I take the first earliest hasty omer of barley on the land, because I believe it does represent the Messiah. He came out of the tribes. All of the territory of Israel was given to all of the tribes. He came out of his brethren, okay? But he was the first one, because without him, they could not be redeemed. Without him, they could not be sons of God again. Without him, they could not call Elohim Abba. I hope that answers your question. And boy, guys, just pray. Just pray. I'm not asking you to follow me. I am asking for the hope that's within. I am answering for the hope that's within me.